Good morning and welcome to Impact. To Mayor Ginther, Councilmember Favor, other city officials, media, to my staff and board, to our rent assistance providers and partners, and to all of our guests, welcome to Impact Community Action. That is not just our name, but it is an ideal to be achieved. Now more than ever, we must have a unified message about coming together to truly impact community action. We must embrace that mantra that we are all in this together. Impact was born out of the war on poverty. Our mission is to fight poverty by providing hope-inspiring help and real opportunities for self-sufficiency. The economic collapse sparked by COVID-19 pandemic triggered the most unequal recession in modern history, delivering a temporary and mild setback for those at or near the top, and a depression-like blow for those at the bottom. I commend our national, state, and local leaders for putting partisanship aside and choosing partnerships that prioritize the people. Our community came together from the City of Columbus to the county, to the Housing Stabilization Coalition, to the Ohio Department of Development, the Columbus Foundation, and a host of other foundations, individuals, and community partners who answered the call to fight this pandemic and the economic hardships that it accelerated. Impact is part of the Housing Stabilization Coalition, a coalition of approximately 20 nonprofits and government agencies working together to address issues of affordable housing as well as eviction prevention rent assistance in Franklin County. Together, we have collectively distributed over $33 million in rent and mortgage assistance to over 14,000 households since this program began on June 1st of 2020. Impact has been on the front lines at the eviction court, assisting thousands of residents, and together we have kept them safe and stably housed. But now the eviction moratorium has expired. There is heightened anxiety about the next wave of challenges that are facing our community. Impact still has $50 million to distribute. We can help as many people as we already have, another 15,000 remain stably housed. There is no reason that anyone has to be evicted, especially at this point in our pandemic wave when we're expecting that fourth wave. Thank you to the mayor and to the City of Columbus for providing additional support to our partners. We welcome the additional 22 partners who will specifically be targeting the most vulnerable in our community. To Mayor Ginther, I simply say thank you for your leadership. People have often asked me if I have any interest in going into politics, and I tell them I do not. I do not want to take on that sacrifice of my privacy, but I commend you for answering the call for the most noble of service to serve the community. So thank you for not only being a leader, but thank you for being a public servant, committed to our community. And with that, I'd like to bring up our mayor, Mayor Andrew J. Ginther.
Well, thank you, Bo, and the entire team here at Impact Community Action. This is my first visit here. I think you moved during the midst of the pandemic last June. Pretty amazing transition and a great way for you all to socially distance, properly serve our neighbors in need, and so great to be with you here today. Grateful to the entire team and the entire coalition for partnering with residents and landlords to distribute emergency rental assistance during this challenging time. As you mentioned, more than 14,400 Central Ohio renters and their families have received more than $33 million in COVID-19 rental assistance from the City of Columbus, the county, and the state, all working together in partnership with local nonprofits. As we have seen time and time again, our neighbors who are the most vulnerable in our community are also the ones who have been hardest hit by the pandemic. We've seen this devastating impact in many ways in COVID-19 infections, job losses, and housing instability. Right now in our city, we have 31 census tracts that the Urban Land Institute has named the 90th percentile or higher in its Emergency Rental Assistance Priority Index. This index measures the prevalence of low-income renters who are at risk of housing instability and homelessness. And it accounts for risk factors that are higher for groups who have been historically and systematically excluded from housing and economic opportunities, as well as those who face greater challenges from COVID-19. We put millions of dollars for rental assistance into the hands of residents who need it. But we know there's more work to do among new Americans, individuals with disabilities, seniors, expectant mothers, youth in transition, and other at-risk populations who don't know this funding exists or how to access it. The stakes are particularly high for these groups. Take, for example, data from Celebrate One, our community's effort to reduce infant mortality and provide better birth outcomes for our families, which shows that the housing instability during pregnancy increases the likelihood of preterm birth, which is the leading contributor to infant mortality. We're also mindful of the connections between eviction and financial hardship, depression, and poor maternal and child health. We need to do more, and we are. That's why I'm pleased to announce today that the city is awarding $12.2 million to 26 community organizations through the Stable Housing Initiative, which provides critical rental assistance to residents in need through organizations they know and trust. This is in addition to the $26 million in federal funding the City of Columbus has allocated for rental assistance since the pandemic began. So just to keep this in perspective, in a given year, the City of Columbus awards about $680,000 for rental assistance. So think about this collective community lift and partnership that Bo and his team are helping to lead with all these tremendous community organizations that in roughly the last year, $38.2 million is going to go to these community organizations. Bo mentioned the amount of resources they still have left available. And so now is the time to partner with these community organizations that our neighbors know and trust to make sure they're aware of these resources and how to access them. We know that housing stability is absolutely critical to our city's equity agenda, and as we prepare and execute a dynamic, inclusive recovery, because we know this pandemic, to Bo's point, has provided some of the most inequitable outcomes in both health, safety, and economic stability for families. So organizations receiving funds from the Stable Housing Initiative include Lutheran Social Services, Choices for Victims of Domestic Violence, which, as Sue will share in a moment, works closely with multiple organizations to provide rental assistance to residents affected by intimate partner violence and COVID-19. We're also awarding funding to Jewish Family Services, serving seniors, immigrants, and refugees, Star House, serving homeless youth, Equitas Health, serving our LGBTQ+ community, the Homeless Family Foundation, serving pregnant women who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless, St. Stephen's Community House in Linden, and the Columbus Urban League, which will use the funding they receive to serve Black female-led households. Through this initiative, we hope to equitably distribute the city's federal rental assistance funding to every eligible Columbus renter so that our residents can live in safe, stable housing during this pandemic and beyond. We're committed to working with all of our community partners, the court, city council, to ensure that residents are empowered to pay for rent, groceries, and utilities, and that we're putting everyone on a pathway towards recovery, resiliency, and prosperity. Now it's my pleasure to introduce a great advocate and champion for our housing agenda as a part of a larger equity agenda. Please welcome Councilmember Shayla Faber.
Good morning, and thank you, Mayor Ginther. I am incredibly honored to be here this morning to join in this exciting announcement for our community. First, I'd like to thank Bo Chilton and Impact Community Action not only for hosting us here today, but for the tireless work they have done since July 2020 to distribute over $34 million to families in need here in Columbus and throughout Central Ohio. We put forth a monumental task, but Impact was able to rise to the occasion, work through challenges, and implement a successful program that has helped thousands of families stay in their homes. I'd also like to thank Mayor Ginther, as well as Director Stevens, and the entire Housing and Human Services development team for all of the work over the past year to get these resources out to our community. Back in November 2019, which seems like ages ago, I worked with Impact and Legal Aid of Society of Columbus to launch the Eviction Prevention Program. That initiative was responsive to nearly 18,000 evictions that were being filed in Franklin County every year. At that time, we couldn't imagine the level of crisis that our eviction problem would grow into. But the reality today, during this ongoing pandemic, is that the crisis is real. Today's announcement is about our ongoing fight to stabilize families in Columbus by keeping them safely and adequately housed as we continue to find our way through this global health pandemic. We are truly fortunate here in Columbus to have access to these unprecedented resources that will help our community partners get to work assisting families. Many thanks goes to our entire congressional delegation for their efforts and advocacy to get these dollars to Columbus. We have the great opportunity to learn from Impact and their partners over the past year, and now we are prepared to put an additional $12.2 million on the ground with 26 organizations committed to serving our most vulnerable residents. This includes our LGBTQ+ residents, as well as our immigrant, youth, disabled, and other specific populations that have been hard to reach over the past year. I am particularly proud of and excited about the unique partnerships that have formed through this work. In just a moment, you will hear about the work of Lutheran Social Services, Choices, and the work they will do alongside partners to help stabilize victims of domestic violence. We know that our new American communities may experience language barriers that prevent them from accessing and completing the necessary paperwork, but we now have organizations on board to help fill those gaps. These are the types of programs and partnerships that will make a real impact, and I'm hopeful that Columbus can stand out as a national model for this work. And finally, I'd like to thank the landlords who have worked with their tenants during this unprecedented time, and also remind our landlords that these resources are also there for you. This pandemic has been extremely hard on our landlord community, especially those smaller landlords who depend on rental income to make their own finances whole. So I urge landlords to call Impact or reach out to any of the additional 26 organizations that we are awarding funding today to see how they can assist you and your tenant before you file an eviction. We cannot forget that just an eviction filing can have a devastating impact on individuals or families and their chance to secure stable housing. So our goal is to make sure everyone is stable, and that includes our housing providers. Please reach out to get assistance. It truly takes each and every one of us to make this initiative work. Thank you again to everyone who's joined us here today and is partnering with the City of Columbus on these efforts. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce Missou Villaleo with Lutheran Social Services. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Councilmember Favor. Thank you to Bo and the entire Impact team for having us here this morning and for all the work they have done and continue to do in the community. And thank you to Mayor Ginther for his leadership alongside Columbus City Council and all of our leaders in the city for ensuring safe, stable housing is at the forefront of the city's agenda. LSS Choices for Victims of Domestic Violence is proud to partner with the Center for Family Safety and Healing, Ethiopian Tawahedo Social Services, and the Ohio Hispanic Coalition to provide vital services to victims of domestic violence and collaborate on the Stable Housing Initiative. The COVID pandemic created a dangerous situation for many of the victims of intimate partner violence that increased violence in the home and decreased the opportunity for victims to seek assistance. Because victims were and continue to be in the home for longer periods of time with their abusive partner, we've seen an increase in the number of victims seeking assistance who have experienced more serious violence, and at the same time, less of an opportunity to seek help and support. The pandemic has also further isolated victims of violence and their families, limiting contact with others who may have intervened. At Choices, we have seen a 17% increase in calls to our hotline over the prior year. Many of those calls initiated by police officers with a victim they are reporting as being in high danger in their own home. Ending a relationship where domestic violence is involved is hard for many reasons, and financial implications for the victim, whether due to loss of a partner's income or newly entering the workforce, financial and housing stability are the most common needs for those we serve. After being subjected to physical, verbal, and financial and other types of violence by someone they loved, sometimes for many years, victims require specialized, trauma-informed services to help them on the path to healing, which is where the expertise of the partners comes in. Each of the partner agencies is currently providing services to victims of intimate partner violence and will continue that work as part of the Stable Housing Initiative. In 2020, Choices, the Center for Family Safety and Healing, ETSS, and the Ohio Hispanic Coalition provided services to more than 1,100 victims and their children residing in the community. The majority of these households needed financial assistance for housing stability to avoid coming into a shelter, or worse yet, returning to an abusive relationship just to keep a roof over their heads. The Stable Housing Initiative funds will offer flexible rental assistance, utility payments, and relocation assistance to keep families safe and stably housed in the community. Without a doubt, this will save lives. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here today, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Benji Jackson, a landlord working closely with Impact, up to the podium.
Good morning. First, let me simply say thank you to Mayor Ginther as well as Impact CEO Bo Chilton for the invitation to speak this morning. My name is K. Benji Jackson, and I have the pleasure of working for the Ackerman Group based out of Cincinnati, and I'm proudly here in the Columbus market. It's no secret that everyone was affected in 2020 by COVID-19, and the rental community was no exception. Many residents reported not being able to pay their full rent, losing jobs, and or expressing the need to move in with family members. Now, 18 months later, we are still seeing that impact firsthand and the significant impact of COVID-19 and what that is having here in this community. As with people all over this world, U.S. renters had to make spending as well as financial changes to their lifestyle due to the pandemic. As millions lost employment as well as just they had to make some changes, we knew that that struggle was important to us to come alongside them. Our company's executive team, they met to determine how do we best help our residents during this difficult time. The biggest takeaway from the meeting was that we needed to just go ahead and go back to our core values of our company, and that is together we create community for people in their real lives. I want to talk about a personal story, and that's going to court Going to court is not fun. I think a lot of people think that as landlords, we are excited to do that. This particular time I went to court, I had continued to say, get online, go and fill out the application with Impact. They'll help you. After 3 or 4 weeks, that did not happen, so court date came. I took 1 minute and walked over to Impact and said, what am I to do? This is the day. Sean Ennis, who is an employee here at Impact, said, trust me, trust the process. And I said, I need them to pay their rent. I can trust the process, but I need them to pay their rent. He said, trust me, trust the process. I said, okay. And still now, 18 months later, I'm still partnering with Impact because we trusted that process. As a landlord, we have to take a moment and realize that it's not just us, it's a community. Over the last 2 weeks, Impact has successfully assisted 68 of our residents here in the Columbus market to have a peace of mind and a roof over their head. I want to give a special thanks to Impact staff, Sherry Chapman Grubbs, as well as Sean Ennis, as well as our partners, the Men of Phi Beta Sigma, Beta Omicron Sigma chapter, as well as Sigma Community Reinvestment and Empowerment for helping to make sure that the process is a smooth process for not only our residents, but for the residents of Columbus. We are committed to Columbus, and we are committed to continuing to build community together. So I ask that as you see this money go out to this community here in Columbus, please take the time, breathe, and understand that we are in this together. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together back for our mayor, Mayor Ginther.
Really appreciate your comments, your work, your partnership, your commitment to community, Benji, and you and your colleagues at Ackerman Group. It reminds me of a passage out of a book entitled Evicted by Matthew Desmond, specific to the impact of evictions on African American women. It says that evictions are to African American women what incarceration has been to African American men. So there are a lot of people in this community and communities around the country have been talking a lot about racial justice and racial equity in recent months and years. If you're really committed to racial equity and racial justice, we need you as landlords and property owners to follow Benji's lead and to work with Impact Community Action. We need to bring the landlords to the table. There are resources available. There are professional community nonprofits who have a track record of success working to get these resources into our landlords' hands. But we need our families stabilized. We need them to be in safe, affordable housing as we can continue to build our recovery out of this pandemic. As we've heard time and time again, this issue is so important because of the breadth and depth of its impact, its connection to other challenges and determinants of health, and the simple fact that support is available to those who need it now. Like so many of our most pressing priorities, today's announcement is not a first step, and it will not be our last. But it is part of our ongoing commitment to uplift our neighbors, investing in families and children, those in need, and to extend our reach to include even more individuals and families across Columbus. I am happy to take any of the questions from the press. If we can keep it to the housing and this information at first, and then, as you all know, I'll stick around and you can ask me any question on your mind. But any questions regarding this announcement here today that either Bo, Benji, Councilmember Favor, Sue, and I could answer? We also have Mike Stevens from the Department of Development if there are any more detailed questions as well. You guys seem so shy this morning. You just don't want to talk about housing. I think this is a pretty big deal. Think about that, $680,000 in a given year, and through Impact Community Action and this partnership, we're going to end up putting $38.2 million at this point with the current announcement. We have additional resources that we are able to invest as we determine additional gaps in the system the months and years ahead. Pretty big deal.
Talk a little bit about how this will impact the community. I look at right behind you, fighting poverty by providing hope-inspired help. I mean, how will this impact the community? And you know I'm going to tie this into crime, but give me the general answer and let me follow up.
Yeah, I think this is at the heart of the equity agenda. I mean, there are many researchers and folks that have lent good bit of evidence-based approach that housing is the great vaccine. So when you look at that root challenge of housing, if you can provide families and individuals with safe, stable, affordable housing, and all the housing experts here can speak to this, it helps to address many big challenges in people's lives. And so if we can do everything we can to keep families in the housing they're in, particularly as kiddos start back to school, most of them on Wednesday, and those families that have faced so much over the last year and a half, we know it'll have a positive impact on the quality of life for that family and the future of those kids in those families. Any other housing points from Lou Ann's question? Anything else you guys like to add? Please. You got? Okay.
With that, Mayor, there were 5 shootings in less than 24 hours, 2 of them involving young teen suspects. So how can this initiative help to impact that? And also a follow-up to that is just, what are these groups doing to get guns off the street so that we can have that problem also addressed?
Well, there are many of our housing partners that are part of this housing collaborative that are really focused on keeping families in their homes. So we have a number of other groups that are working with us to get guns off the street. But as you know, there's been a proliferation of guns, particularly illegal crime guns, in cities across the country. And it's not just big cities. Mid-sized cities are seeing unprecedented amounts of violence and homicides. And we believe that part of that is due to the economic insecurity. We know that there are many impacts and effects of COVID that have impacted folks, particularly as we've talked about here today, that were already struggling to make it and to get by. But we also know that there is a challenge. We have, on top of this global pandemic, a reckoning around racial justice and the involvement and engagement between police and community, the likes of which we haven't probably seen since 1968 as a country. And so you put all those things together, and I think that's what you're seeing playing out in our cities. And so our approach has been comprehensive. It isn't just the police. We got to have the Care Coalition from the Department of Health. We have the APPS effort based out of Recreation and Parks. As you know, our Department of Public Service, working with the Y this summer, employed hundreds of young people to help not just with beautification and neighborhood cleanup activities, but also training so that they can kind of build their resume and skill set to take advantage of opportunities in the future. It's why we're expanding the Reroute initiative that we piloted in 2 precincts initially, and ready to announce the next steps with our group violence intervention that's being led by renowned criminologist David Kennedy. And we're looking at investing, obviously, in resources as we change the division and the training in the years to come. So it's going to be a comprehensive approach, but we know it's going to take a lot of work and it's going to take time.
Do you think these dollars here could have some sort of spin-off effect on the crime, though? Maybe giving people hope and help?
I think absolutely. I think anytime that folks know that they're going to be able to stay in their homes and that they'll have access to safe, stable housing for their children because of resources like this and because of the leadership of folks in this community, I think that'll have an impact, no doubt about it.
Be interested in responding to that?
The mayor did a wonderful job. These things are all connected. We've been having conversations around the country around what systemic racism really looks like in action and what we're seeing in our communities as it relates to high eviction rates and affordable housing crisis. It all plays together. And so if you think about housing just being one part of the chain, connected to that is workforce development. So the city putting dollars behind ensuring that folks have the opportunity to develop the skills that they need in order to get the jobs that they need, in order to afford the housing. Let's also talk about education and making sure that our students can get back into school and that they can get the education that they need so they can get the job that they need in order to secure the housing that they need. These things all work together, and I truly do believe that these dollars will have an impact in people's lives, and we will start to see the decline, not only in the city of Columbus, but around the country as we continue to pour resources where they're absolutely needed. Thank you, Mayor.
I think, the council member reinforced, I think, in a point that we made earlier, that because this pandemic has impacted our community and communities around the country inequitably, huge disparity in both positivity rates, severity and length of illness based on exposure to COVID, the disproportionate amount of folks who were on the front lines all during the pandemic, maybe even before they had access to protective equipment and certainly access to vaccines. If we're really committed to a dynamic, inclusive recovery, we have to invest these resources in an equitable way with that in mind. And so really focusing on our neighbors who have taken the brunt of both the economic and the public health impact of COVID-19 and investing with that lens of equity with respect to emergency rental assistance and everything we do as a city, that's how you can build the resiliency and the type of recovery we want to see here in Columbus. Thanks, everybody. I'll stick around for a few minutes if you need anything else. Thanks for everybody that participated.